Hey, you ever wanted to upgrade your rotors or your brakes on your F-150 or for any car for that matter? Stay with me in this video. I'll show you exactly how easy it is to change your rotors and your brake pads. Come on, let's get at it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to change your rotors on your brake pads on your F-150. Or this can work for any vehicle that you have. The steps are the same. Follow along and I'll show you guys exactly how to get it done. If you ever wanted to upgrade your rotors and your brakes or replace your rotors and your brakes in your F-150 or any car that you have for that matter, the steps are pretty much going to be the same no matter what you do. And of course, my job here is to make it as easy as possible for you guys to follow along and do it by yourself. Now listen, as usual, I'll leave links in the description for all the things that I'm going to use that are going to be specific to my 2016 F-150, and they should work for any 2015 up to 2020 model that you may have. As I walk you through the steps, I'm going to be going over a couple of tips and tricks for you guys that you guys can use to make this process a little bit easier for you, so it's not as intimidating as most of you might think. All right, with that said, let's go ahead, jump into it, and let's change these pads and rotors. I'm going to be doing the full set. I'm going to be replacing the front and the rear rotors and brake pads. So if you guys want to replace both of them or you just want to replace your rear, you can jump to that section. As usual, timestamps will be below. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and let's change these rotors and brakes. One of the things you want to do is jack up your car first and remove your lugs. I'm using an impact gun, so I can do this after my tire has been raised off the floor. But if you don't have an impact gun and all you're using is your lug removal tool or a ratchet, you want to loosen them first on the ground before you jack up your tires. And then once they're loose and the tire is in the air, you can loosen them the rest of the way and take them off. Once you have the car jacked up and all the lugs removed, you can go ahead and remove the tire from the truck. What I like to do with my tire is I like to slide it back up under my truck just in case this thing fails. Because you're going to need access to the back of these back bolts here, one of the things you want to do is see if you can turn your steering wheel all the way to the right so that you'll have access to these bolts here. Makes it easier whenever you're trying to remove them. Before we begin, we want to go ahead and find our brake fluid master cylinder, and you want to unscrew the cap and set it to the side. This is going to help us since we're going to have to be compressing the piston to help the piston compress more easily. So take it off, set it to the side. All right, now let's start the process of removing our brake caliper. The overall process is going to be as follows. We want to take off our brake caliper, remove our brake shoes from inside. Next, we're going to remove the caliper bracket and then the rotor. That's the last. So there are two bolts here, one here and one here. These are 13 millimeters. You want to go ahead and loosen them. Repeat the same process for the bottom one. Once you have the bottom one removed, now you need to be careful, because if you remove this bolt, the caliper cover is going to fall off and you have some brake lines here that you don't want to put any pressure on. For that, I have a little tool that I use to hook my brake caliper. What I'm going to do is remove the caliper cover and hook it somewhere up here so that it doesn't put any stress on these lines. All right, so now we can go ahead and remove the caliper cover, as you can see here. And I'm going to use my little hook that I have here, feed it through one of these holes and hook it somewhere where it won't get damaged. Now the brake pads were held in with these pistons that were here. So what we want to do is we want to remove the brake pads, and they should simply just pull out. They're held in by clips here and here. So what we want to do is go ahead and remove our brake pads, set them to the side. One of the things that you want to check on your rotor caliper bracket is that these caliper pins move freely, okay? They want to be able to slide in and out without any problems. So if you have any problems with them moving freely, now is the time to change them. They just have a little rubber boot here that you can remove. You can re-lubricate the pins and slide them back in. These look like they're moving pretty freely, so I'm not going to trouble them. Next, you want to remove the bracket bolts. And the bracket bolts, the bracket is held in place by these bolts right here. This one and this one. So what we want to do, go ahead and remove those next. Now these are held on pretty tight, so you're going to need either a big wrench or again an impact gun if you have one. So let's go ahead and see if we can break these free. Just like that, your bracket is off. Now we can go ahead and set the bracket aside. Remember, there are clips on here, so if you're going to reuse them, don't lose them, or if your kit came with new brackets, then you can replace them. All right, as you can see, my rotor is pretty much loose. Now listen, this is not going to be as easy as mine was for some of you. What I like to do when I replace my brakes, because I've done this before, is I put never seize on here to help it so that it doesn't bind. A lot of times these rotors can get rusted onto the plate on the back here, onto the hub, and you're gonna have to knock it with a hammer. If yours is stuck, what you can do is you can knock it from the back side here with a rubber mallet and knock it this side and this side, this side and this side, and keep doing it until it breaks the rust off, and then you should be able to remove it just like this. Now it's time to put on our new rotor. Mine are drilled and slotted. Now here's a trick for you if you don't know. A lot of times these rotors come labeled. If you're, well, first of all, if you don't have a drill or slotted rotor and it's just a regular rotor, you can just put it on either side. It doesn't matter. For me, I'm on the front passenger side, and the easy way to tell which side these rotors go is if you put it up here and you rotate it. You see these lines here? All you need to do is look at the direction of these lines, and as long as they are pointed towards the back of the vehicle, then you know that the rotor is in the right orientation. So for this one, we're going to put it on, and it's pretty much, you just line it up with the holes and slide it on. Now, in order to get the bracket back on, one of the tricks I like to use is I want to take a lug nut and just thread it on to the rotor here so that it pushes it and keeps it seated. Otherwise, you're going to have to be fighting with this back and forth sometimes. It becomes a pain. So it's easier to just put this on here and have it hold the rotor in place. All right, that's good enough. Now let's go ahead and put the caliper bracket back on. Well, to get the brackets back on, all we really need to do is slide this over our rotor and line up our bolts and start threading them through. Once you got the top one, you can go ahead and thread the bottom one through as well. Now let's go ahead and tighten back these bolts. If you have a torque wrench, you want to go ahead and torque these down to the correct settings. I think for the F-150 they're 125 foot-pounds, but you want to check in your manual, get them tightened down. Another thing, once you have your rotors on, is you want to hit them with a little bit of brake cleaner. That will keep it nice and fresh. Get any oils off of. You also want to do this for new rotors if you have any. Some of them come with oils on the surface. So if you have some brake cleaner, go ahead and clean off your rotors before you put them on. My kit comes with clips, so I'm going to go ahead and replace the clips. One of the things you want to do with your brake pads before you put them on is, one, you want to give them some lubrication, especially on the points of contact here that meet these brackets, and on the back side here where the piston is going to be pressing up against it to squeeze it. You don't need a lot, you just need a little bit just to keep it lubricated. So one thing you want to do is, usually they'll supply you with some grease here, but if you don't, you can get some silicone based grease just to put it on here and keep it nice and lubricated. All right, so let's go ahead and lubricate these up. Again, you just need a little bit of grease, you don't need much. So what I like to do is I'll put a little bit on the top, a little bit on the bottom, and a little bit on the back. They usually just give you enough for both of them, so make sure you don't use up all of it on one. And once you have it lubricated, all you got to do is slide it into the clips, and it should just slide right in. All right, we got one there. All right, just repeat the same process on the other brake pad and you should be good to go. Now it's time to put our brake caliper back on. Now, this is the fun part. If you can see in here, we have two pistons, one here and one here. We got to make sure that these pistons are retracted all the way back. Now, you can do this by a bunch of different methods. You can take a screwdriver with a block of wood and just pry them and press them back in. I don't recommend that. You can get a tool like this, or if you have like a C-clamp, you can clamp a block of wood in here and tighten it down until these are pressed in place. But what I like to do is just reuse the old brake pads that I had as a support. Using this tool, tighten it down like this, and it should start to compress and push that piston back in. You can see it like this. You can see them going in like this, and you want to do it evenly, so I'll do it halfway on one and then I'll repeat it on the other side. So I'll do it halfway on one side and then I'll repeat it on the other side, just so that they push down evenly. You don't want the pistons to be all cockeyed and going in sideways. So just work your way down until they're flat. If you don't do this, then there's no way that you'll be able to put this on the rotor. The bracket just won't be able to fit. You got to make sure that the pistons are compressed all the way in. All right, just like that. All right, once that's done, the hard part is over, guys. You're pretty much ready to put this thing back together. So what you want to do next is you want to go ahead and slide this back over your brakes, and it should line up easy. Now what you can do is you want to be able to catch one of these pins at first, just to take a little bit of pressure off the caliper. So once you get one started, it should fall right into place. Once you got the first one started, you can go ahead and line up the second hole down at the bottom here. Once you have it lined up, you want to go ahead and tighten the caliper bracket bolts. You don't want to over tighten them, you just want them nice and snug. I think the rating on this is maybe 30-40 foot-pounds. It's not that much, guys. Repeat the process on the second bolt. All right, now that your bolts are tightened, you can go ahead and let's see if we can put this wheel on. All right, now that everything is tightened up, we can go ahead and put our wheel back on. Once you got your tire on, you can go ahead, lower the truck down. All right, so we finished with the front tire. We're gonna go ahead and repeat the process on the other front tire, and then we're gonna go ahead and jump to the rear. I'm not gonna show you the process on the other front tire because it's the same as this one. So let's go ahead and jump to the rear and see if we can replace those. All right, guys, now that we're done with the front, we're gonna jump to the back. We're gonna jack up the F-150 or your car, whatever you have, and access and remove the wheel so you can access the brake calipers and the rotor. The first thing we want to do again is we're going to remove the two bolts holding on the brake caliper. Let's go ahead, remove the first bolt, and let's go ahead and remove the second bolt. Once you remove the top bolt, remember to hold on to the brake caliper so it doesn't fall off. Once you set your bolts aside, you should be able to wiggle this thing right off, just like that. Again, we want to hook it and set it to the side somewhere safe so that we don't have any tension on the brake line. In this case on the rear, I can actually just rest it on the axle right here. So that's good, get it out the way. Next, we want to remove the caliper bracket bolts. Again, these are on pretty tight, so you're going to have to use some force to break them loose. There's one on the top, on this side here, and the second one on the back here. You want to go ahead and loosen these, take them both off. Got one bolt here. Once you have your caliper bracket out like this, you should be able to just slide the brake pads out and remove them just like this. You can throw those to the side. If your kit came with new caliper brackets, replace them. If not, you can reuse the old one. All right, with that done, we can go ahead and pull our rotor off. This one is a little bit more on a little bit tighter than the front ones because it's got the parking brake shoes on here, but apart from that, it should come right off. Now remember, if yours doesn't come off this easy, you might have to bang on it with a hammer, but I have never sees on mine, which I'm going to put back on here again before I put on the new one, just so that it doesn't get rusted on and stuck on here if I ever have to replace it again. I like to use Never Seize here. It's anti-seize lubricant. You can pick this up at any of your auto parts stores, and I pretty much just run it around the hub and paint it on just to get a little bit of coverage so that I won't have to worry about this thing rusting on here ever again. All right, once we got that on, we can go ahead and slide the new rotor back on, and it should just slide on just like that. You can use this time to clean up your rotor if you have any dirt or dust on there, or any oils. Little brake cleaner will clean it right up. I'm going to go ahead and replace these clips with the ones that came with the kit. They're the exact same ones and they should just snap right on. Now that we have the retention clips on, we can go ahead and mount the caliper mounting bracket back on. The idea here is just to get them all started, so we're going to put these bolts on first, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide the brake pads in. And don't forget, we have to push the piston, and don't forget we have to push the piston back on our brake caliper, but I'll show you that here in a second. Remember to get your bolts nice and snug. I'm not going to tighten them up yet, but don't forget you got to torque these down to I think it's 125 foot-pounds for the F-150. But these bolts for the caliper bracket, you gotta have those definitely tight. All right, once again, we're going to go ahead and compress the piston because we want to make sure this is all the way back before we put it on. So I'm going to take one of the old brake shoes and drop it in here. I'm going to slide my tool back in here and just rotate this thing nice and easy, and you can see it pushing the piston all the way back. All right, once it bottoms out, you are done pushing back the piston. Now we're pretty much ready to put this thing back together. All right, once again, let's go ahead and grease up our pads. I want to grease the contact points that are going to get in contact with the clips. So here, here, and the back of the pad. It doesn't take a lot. You just need to put a little bit of grease on each one of the points, just to help with squealing, just in case. Just like that. We got the first one in. We can go ahead and lubricate the second one. Once again, line it up with your clips, and it should just snap right in. Just like that. Now that our bracket is on and it's torqued down, make sure you torque down the bolts. We can go ahead and put back on our brake caliper. Again, this should slide on pretty easily, just like that. And now all you need to do is put the screws back in. You can start one, then start the other. Once you got those on, you can go ahead and tighten them down. Same thing as before, you want to make sure you torque these to spec. These don't have to be as tight as the other ones. It's only about 20, either 26 or 40 PS pound per square foot. So you just want them nice and snug. All right, now that's done. Last thing to do is we're going to put our tire back on. All right, let's go ahead. Last thing to do is line up our tire and put it back on. Once we're done putting our tire back on, we can go ahead, lower the truck, and you are done. All right guys, welcome back. We just replaced all 4 rotors and brake pads. Now, If this video was helpful, don't forget to smash that like button. I really appreciate it, guys. It helps out the channel so much. Oh, I forgot to mention, since I'm working on my F-150, if you guys haven't already checked out my other F-150 mods that I've done to my F-150 here, feel free to go ahead and click the links, check it out somewhere. It's somewhere around here, or it's going to be in the description. If you need to upgrade your brakes and your rotors, you can follow this video. If you just need to change your brake pads, you can follow this video. If you just need to replace your rotors, you can follow this video. So listen, again, there are a few steps that we have to take. Every car is the same, and there are the same steps that we have to follow. Take off the wheel, take off the calipers, take off the brakes, take off the brackets, take off the rotors, put it all back together, and you should be good to go. Now, before we finish, we want to remember we took off our brake fluid cap. You want to go ahead and tighten that back up, put that in, and the last step is you want to go back into your vehicle and you want to pump the brakes. All right, start it up and you're going to pump the brakes. It's going to feel weird at first because the brake lines have to repressurize. So you're going to have to pump it a few times. Once you've pumped it and you have brake pressure, the next step is you're going to have to bed in your brakes, basically get them ready to be used on the road. And different manufacturers of different rotors call for different things, but typically you're going to be doing a bunch of brakings from like 40 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour 2 or 3 times, and then from like 20 to 25 to 0 or 35 to 10, something like that. But you want to break them in before you actually put them to the test on the road. Apart from that, that's it, guys. It's not that big a deal, and you guys definitely can do it. I definitely encourage you to tackle this project. It's an awesome upgrade, and if you have wobbly brakes, you're stepping on your brakes and your car steering wheel is shaking, or you can feel your pedal pulsing, chances are you got bad rotors, and this was an easy upgrade. I'll leave links in the description for the parts that I used. You don't have to use those parts, but again, they work just fine. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it, as always. And until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.